All right. Hi, everybody. Just seeing how everybody's doing today. And I'm going to run through a couple things before I get started here. As you see on your screen, it's popping up right now. We're going to cover the Renaissance. But before we get into that, I wanted to check in with everybody and make sure everybody's on the same page. So, most of you have been doing a great job at keeping up with all your work and completing things on time. What I wanted to let you guys know is the assignment that you're doing right now, this assignment for today is going to be due Thursday night at midnight. As you know, spring break starts next week, so we need to make sure that we are getting everything turned in and done so I can get it graded by Friday because we don't want to have anything to work on over spring break. So I'm going to run through some slides here and I will talk about some different things. And there'll be some questions embedded so you guys can answer them, but I just wanted to go through some stuff and kind of have a face-to-face thing where I can talk and explain some of the stuff rather than you just learning on your own. So the Renaissance was a time period between 1300 and 1600. What it means, the word Renaissance means rebirth. So it's the changing of an area, it's the rebirth, the redesigning, the developing of a certain place. What was it? So it was a time of artistic creativity, political, social, economic, and cultural change. A reawakened interest in classical learning, especially about ancient Greece and Rome. So, this is a great topic to discuss for us because it's talking about all the things that we've covered so far this year. We're looking at art, we're looking at political systems, looking at different forms of government. We're looking at social interactions and how people connected with one another. We're looking at economics, which includes money and trade and all those different things that we've just recently talked about in Africa. And it's also about cultural change, the way of spreading ideas and changing things and new ideas about the way people thought about things. So we'll talk about a lot of that. When you look at interest in classical learning, they're talking about the different things that we saw in ancient Greece and Rome that were big impacts, such as democracy. Those types of things are coming back up. They wanted to look at it and they really wanted to expand on it and take some of the things that they had there and adapt them and make them into their own. Okay, so there were two periods of the Renaissance. It was the Italian Renaissance, which was from about 1300 to 1600, and the Northern Renaissance, which made up all the other countries that were north of Italy. And where did it begin? So the Renaissance began in Italy during the 14th century and spread throughout the rest of Europe as things went. If you guys look at the map right here, you can see where everything is broken up into different parts. So you have up here, there's a little Providence here, area here, in different colors. What happened was, which you'll see on the next slide, Italy was broken down into smaller parts. It wasn't actually all these big things. So here he talks about how during this time period, Italy was not unified. It wasn't one country. It was made up of individual city states, like we saw in Athens and Sparta and all those different places that we did our projects on earlier this year with Corinth. And looking at that, it's the same type of thing. Each individual city state had their own form of government. So something that we've talked about in the past is a lot of times this didn't work when people lived in really close quarters, close to each other, and had different forms of government. There seemed to be a lot of fights and a lot of battles and stuff. So we'll kind of look as the time goes on how long it takes for Italy to become unified. So why Italy? So the Renaissance began in Italy because these city states had a lot of wealth. Florence, Milan, Venice, and Rome. So we see that money is again the center of everything. The city states became very wealthy during the Middle Ages because they were the centers of trade. So because everybody had to buy and sell different goods from them, it allowed them to get a bunch of money, and then they were able to industrialize and kind of grow and grow and grow. So the trade industry helped these industries like banking and manufacturing. So if you had enough money to produce products, they then put these big manufacturing places in where they could actually create it and do their own thing there. These city states were led by powerful and wealthy merchant class who became patrons or financial supporters. So these people were giving money to the arts, allowing the Renaissance to flourish. So all these people that had a lot of money and were wealthy in the area, they donated money and they gave their money to the cause. They wanted to create all these new developments that created the Renaissance period. The city-state of Florence was a republic. We talked about that early on. It's a wealthy middle-class merchant families, and guilds held much of the power. Guilds are like groups of people. The city's influential Medici family, or it's Medici actually, Medici family, included some of the richest merchants and bankers in Europe. I'm not going to get into all of this stuff. The Medici family was one of the ones that ruled Florence. We're not going to really spend a lot of time looking at that slide. Some of the pictures aren't popping up right now. I think they're just struggling to load. I know you guys have had some technical difficulties on your end as well, so we're having a couple problems with some of the stuff. The Medici family gained control of the government. They started to run things, and they ruled Florence for about 300 years. So they were a big part of the expansion of this. We're going to flip through a couple slides, so if I don't speak on it, you don't really need to know what's on that one. An intellectual movement called humanism was the heart of the Renaissance movement. Humanism was a system of education and thought that differed greatly from what had occurred during the Middle Ages. So now we're focusing on the way that people looked at things, the way that people discussed things, the ideas that were coming out of it. It was the study of worldly subjects such as grammar, history, poetry, and rhetoric, rather than religious subjects. So we're changing the way that people thought. We're looking at new things. They looked at English, they looked at words, they looked at the way that people talk. That's grammar. They looked at history. They wanted to see how these ancient Greeks and ancient Romans lived and how their lives affected how they live today. Poetry, music, all that stuff became a big part. We already talked about the arts in the earlier slides. Humanists, they wanted to study the text and cultures of ancient Greeks and Romans to increase their understanding of the current times. So they believed if they knew what was going on in the past, that it would help give them some more information about what they were going through today. Humanists believed that education should stimulate the individual's creative powers. So think about that. Humanists were very similar to a group of people that we learned about previously back in ancient Greece. I'll let you guys think about that a little bit, about who that could be. They had the same type of ideas. In terms, the Renaissance man comes from the belief that men should embrace all knowledge and become skilled in all things. They wanted people to be able to do multiple things. This person here, Alberti, was an accomplished architect, painter, poet, scientist, mathematician, and also a great horseman. So in the past, we had a lot of people who wanted to focus on one specific job. In today's world, we want you to be well-rounded. We want you to be able to do multiple things. That's what the Renaissance man kind of did. It was a person who could do everything. So if you look at our schooling, we don't want you to just be a good mathematician. We need you to be able to read. We need you to be able to write, communicate with others, use computers, know stuff about history, understand science, and all these things kind of work together. As you've seen, a lot of our stuff, the stuff that we do in class when we write papers in social studies, we use the concepts that you guys have learned in your language arts classes. When you go to science, there's times where you'll use math. There's lots of different things that come into play. When we talk about economics and social studies, it ties right back into math. So understand that all this stuff is connected. We're going to move through this slide. We don't really need to look at manuscripts. Just a couple other things. And Machiavelli wrote The Prince, which stressed the ends justifies the means. So basically what that was saying is that rulers should use whatever method necessary to achieve their goals. They were saying that you needed to look at things and say, did what we're doing, does what we want the outcome to be, is it worth what we're doing in the process? This can tie right into our E plus R equals O. You need to look at your end goal. You need to look at your outcome. And with that, you need to see what your response is. Take your event, E, take your response, and does your response, is it justified for what you're trying to get out of the outcome? If it doesn't match, it's not going to work. But if you do have a response that matches exactly what you want to get in your outcome, then that's what you're looking for. So if you've got this far, this is as far as we're going to get today, and I will let you guys get to it, answer the rest of the questions. And if you have any other concerns or anything, feel free to reach out and I can